Everyone, good evening and welcome to our chapter on risk assessment. So, class, in this chapter, we will explore the importance of identifying and addressing the weakest link in any system, organization, or team, and how risk assessment can help companies manage various types of risk. So, after attending this presentation on risk assessment, you should be able to 1. Define risk assessment and its importance in managing various types of risk. Second, understand the process of identifying, measuring, and analyzing risks relevant to a program or process. And finally, to be able to recognize the different types of risks that companies are exposed to, including strategic, operational, compliance, reporting, and IT related risk. So, to start, let us define what is risk assessment. So, class, risk assessment is the process of identifying, evaluating, and controlling potential risks that could negatively impact a project or organization. It is a systematic, iterative process that is subject to both quantitative and qualitative inputs and factors. It involves analyzing risks, determining their likelihood and severity, and developing strategies to minimize or eliminate them. Think of it as putting together a puzzle. You need to identify all the pieces and put them together to get the full picture of the risks involved. So just imagine yourself being an conducting an audit, no? Conducting an operational audit. You have different processes, you have different programs within the organization. Now, what you're trying to look into is to be able to identify, evaluate, and control the potential risks or potential hazards that has an impact to the organization. Okay? What are then the steps in the risk assessment process? Okay, what are the steps in the risk assessment process? First step is to identify. Okay? In identifying, you need to perform an inventory of all related components such as processes, systems, and people. Of course, this involves identifying all the areas of the organization that are relevant to the program or process being evaluated. Okay? So, of course, if this is an operational audit, you are conducting an operational audit of the financial management system. So what are the various processes that are related to that? You have cash disbursements on the accounting side of it, the recording, uh, the inventory, no? So everything that is related to that process, you will be, you should consider, no? You should factor in those processes in assessing the risk, no? Those that are relevant to the program or process being evaluated. But take note, class, that not all risks are applicable to every organization because each organization is unique in terms of its business activities, operations, and the environments in which it operates. So, for example, a manufacturing company may face risks related to product quality, supply chain disruptions, or workplace safety. But a service-based company may not face the same types of risks. Similarly, a company operating in a highly regulated industry such as healthcare or finance may face compliance risks that are not applicable to companies in other industries. Therefore, it is very important for companies to conduct a thorough risk assessment that is tailored to their specific needs and circumstances. And this ensures all relevant risks are identified and managed effectively, and that the overall performance of the system or group is not compromised. So in the identification part pa lang class, tingnan nyo muna kung relevant ba tong klase na risk na to or hindi. Okay? Second step is on measuring the risk. No? In measuring the risk, you are measuring the impact and the livelihood of risks using a 3 or 5-point scale. So the impact measures may include insignificant, minor, moderate, major, or catastrophic, while the likelihood measures may include rare, unlikely, possible, likely, or almost certain. Take note that in the measurement phase, in the measurement phase, you need to consider what are your tolerable levels or acceptable levels of risk, no? So, iba-iba. Maybe what is material to you might be immaterial to the other industries. So, you need to, once those potential risks in the first step have been identified, you need to measure the likelihood by using subjective or quantitative measures. The last step in the risk assessment process is the analysis phase. Okay? Here, we assess the likelihood and potential impact of a particular risk event. Actually, it does not end there because you're going to monitor, no? Monitor that particular risk from time to time, no? So the process can be performed using various tools and techniques such as risk matrices or scenario analysis. And by analyzing risks, individuals and organizations can prioritize their response and focus their resources in the most significant risk. So you need to tackle each risk depending on their parang order of priority. Kung saan yung pinaka mas mataas na risk, you need to treat it, no, immediately. Kung low risk naman, we will tolerate it, but we will still consider it or include it in your risk registry so that you can monitor if the circumstances or the nature of the circumstances still remains the same, no, from time to time. Baka before, hindi pa siya gaanon kalala or ka-severe, no, yung impact ng risk. But as time goes by, nagiging exposed ka na sa risk, so meron ka na ding financial impact or it could be operational impact, no, sa organization. So you need to consider that one. So the first, okay, so we will discuss each step one by one na in detail here. So the first, uulitin natin, that's identifying the risks. Quite often, this step is not exhausted enough or performed by individuals with limited knowledge of the process being assessed. You just imagine, bagong graduate ka pa, and then you will perform an operational audit in an industry that you're not familiar with. So as a result, only some of the relevant risks are identified, which creates several limitations. First and foremost, the fact that all other actions related to the risk assessments will be limited as well. And if a risk has not been identified, no, kung hindi mo na-identify ang risk, hindi mo din iyon measure or hindi mo din yon ma-analyze. Right? Kasi you're blinded, no? Hindi mo nakita eh. So, a key aspect, therefore, of the risk assessment is the identification of the relevant risks. And this takes the form of a list of risks. So, you could start with a list of risks, an inventory of risks, no? And then from there, you could see what are applicable and what are not applicable. So, it is important to note, class, that internal auditors may sometimes fail to identify the relevant risks due to their lack of in-depth knowledge about the process being audited, no? So, hindi nila alam. Okay? So, lack of understanding of the operations. So, therefore, if you are an internal auditor, you need to have a thorough understanding of the business, its processes, and the risks associated with them in order to identify relevant risk. If you're still a fledgling or anong tawag natin doon, like you are starting pa lang sa inyong career, what you're going to do is to read and read, no? Parang ganun yung you need to read the corporate profile, read the industry, yung parang all related news to that industry, how this company or organization generates its revenue, because there might be risk, no, doon sa side na yun, no? So another reason would be lack of independence. If internal auditors are too closely aligned with management or have relationships with key stakeholders, they may be hesitant to identify risks that could reflect poorly on the organization or its leadership. So they might turn a blind eye, no, on the particular risks. And additionally, internal auditors may fail to identify relevant risks due to a lack of resources. What if your time conducting the operational audit, instead of 5 days, naging 2 days na lang? So, limited time, limited resources. So, you might not be able to conduct a comprehensive review of all areas of the organization, or they may not have the necessary tools or expertise to identify risks in certain areas. So, some of you might want to go in the banking industry, or gusto nyo ba mag-audit sa education, or gusto nyo ba dun sa electric cooperatives or cooperatives. What else? So, maraming industry, no? So, yeah, we want to go to service. So, when you jump from one industry to another, of course, there is a skill set that you need to hone, no? Kinakailangang alam nyo. So that when you conduct the audit, hindi kayo mahihirapan, no, to identify the risk. Kasi as on an auditor, it is an added value to your work na alam din natin yung mga potential risk na kinakaharap ng client natin, which can also be applicable pala in external audit, no? Applicable to external audit. Hindi lang siya unique to internal auditing, ang risk assessment. Mas maganda nga if you are an internal auditor, you are aware and you have observed these particular risks and prepare an action plan and execute the same in accordance with the time period that you have allocated in order to mitigate the risk, no? So, of course, aside from that, another way to identify the relevant risk pala is to use a prepared list. So, pwedeng gawa ka ng risk, maglista ka ng risk, pwede din na you will see those prepared list. Meron naman ding na, what do you call this one, na-develop ng mga prepared list for different. So, ang gawin mo na lang is to look for that particular list and see if you can tailor fit it to your business or industry or organization, no? So, identify the risk. Huwag kalimutan, in conducting the risk assessment process, identify the risk by listing, develop your own risk, list of risks, or look into a prepared list with those relevant risks applicable to your organization. Okay? And take note pala, class, there's no hard and fast rule on this one. No? Walang yung risk lang, 5 lang siguro yung risk or 10 lang yung risk. As much as possible, mas maganda if you have a thorough understanding, broad or comprehensive understanding of your business, so that you will be able to see it, the big picture ba, or the 360 degrees ng business, no? Though it will really cost you a lot of time, but at the end of the day, it's really worth it because you have covered all the areas of concern, no? Second, so of course, the process of identifying relevant events can be driven by the scope definition of the review, which can be approached in different ways. And of course, class, one approach is to conduct a brainstorming session with the internal audit team and other stakeholders to identify potential risks and events. So, talk to them. Like, ano ba yung previous years and the previous period ng audit? Are there any items that caught your attention that we need to consider in preparing our audit plan. Okay? Just talk to them, get information, brainstorm, no? It would really make your audit easier, and at the same time you can be directed to the right path. Kasi nga yung audit natin is risk based, kung saan yung pinakamataas na risk, doon tayo gumugugol ng ample time, yung enough time, no? Another approach is to review historical data and incidents to identify trends and patterns. So you look at the reports, no? Look at any trends and patterns that can give you information on how it came to be. Bakit mataas yung risk na to, no? Is there something or may naganap pa in the previous years or months na sa tingin mo that could have an impact to the assessment of risk, no? Maybe there was a change of hands, or there could be a change in administration, or there could be yung sa fraud triangle, there has been an pressure, opportunity, mga ganon. So you consider that one. So changes in key personnel, okay? Additionally, external sources such as industry reports and regulatory guidance can be used to identify potential risk and events. Once potential risks and events have been identified, the next step is to prioritize them based on their likelihood and impact and determine the appropriate responses. So, meron ka ng list, alam mo na yung mga risk, no? Meron ka ng list, uulitin ko, meron ka ng list ng mga risk. So, next thing to do is to what? Determine the appropriate response, prioritize them. So, you have the list of the risks. Afterwards, you prioritize them based on their likelihood. So, you're going to assess the strengths and weaknesses of the components identified in the first step, no? And this involves evaluating the effectiveness of the controls and processes currently in place, as well as identifying any gaps or weaknesses that may exist. So, and once the strengths and weaknesses have been identified, you need to conduct a gap analysis, which involves comparing the current state, ano bang meron ngayon, and what could be the desired state or industry best practices that you would want to adopt to your organization. Okay? And of course, what are these different types of operational risks, no? So the following are some of the common risks that operational auditors should consider during their assessments. And take note, uulitin natin, hindi lahat ng risk applicable to every organization kasi nga this organization comes in different forms, different sizes, different types, no? So in performing these operational reviews, you must examine a wider assortment of risks and not just financial ones. No? Hindi lahat pera. There could be operational, there could be strategic risk. So the first type of risk is the strategic risk. So these risks arise from organization's business strategy and includes changes in the market or competitive landscape. And these risks can have a significant impact on the organization's financial performance and reputation. So if this type of risk, what could be an example? It could include a shift in consumer preferences. So consumer preferences, for books, they might not go for the hardbound books. They might want to have e-books, no? Changes in regulations. Maybe the government has a bias on other technology. It might be technology, or it might be other means to reduce the expenses, household expenses, to elevate naman the ang tawag doon, yung parang status ng each and every one of us, or the introduction of new technologies. Okay? And under operational risks, these are the risks that arise from day-to-day operations, including failure of internal processes, systems, or people. And these risks can have significant impact on the organization's ability to deliver products or services, no? And can lead to financial losses or reputational damage. And what are the examples of this one? It could be system failure. So, you won't be able to provide na the goods kay yung equipment mo nasira, no? So, if you have not considered the fact that it might be, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years mo nang ginagamit, you need to look for what is spare, no? Kung critical siya na makina or engine. It could also be, what else? Supply chain disruptions or employee errors. Yung sa supply chain disruptions class, I think, kinakailangan mo din tingnan kung yung mga supplier ba ng mga major or direct materials ng company, if it's a manufacturing firm, you need to consider the location, or is it imported ba? If merong bagyo, kino-consider din natin yan. Kasi baka naman, di ba, there were news or instances wherein nagkabagyo sa other side of the world. Tapos, yung logistics na side, no? So, mahirap siyang i-transport from the place ng supplier to your place. So, titingnan nyo din yon. So, are there any alternatives? No? Kinakailangan bang maghanap ng iba pang supplier that can provide you with the same quality or same material without compromising the end product, no? Or product quality ng organization or ng business niyo. The next one is compliance risks. And what are these risks? So these risks arise from non-compliance with laws, regulations, or internal policies and procedures. And of course, this risk can lead to legal action, fines, or reputational damage. And examples of this one will include violations of anti-corruption laws, data protection laws, or environmental regulations. Take note, this type of risk it's something that you should not mess with, no? Kasi if you fail to comply with the regulatory requirements, their tendency is ipapa-suspend ng government yung license mo, so you won't be able to earn income na. So hindi to basta-basta na klase na risk. So you need to consider to mitigate this particular risk. It would be better if you have a listing of all the regulatory and other compliance requirements of the organization. Monitor the submission, the filing, ensure that you have all the documentation, so when the government comes knocking down your door, meron kang ipapakita na report, filing, payment, no? Kesa naman kung dumating sila, wala ka pang listahan, no? So these risks can lead to legal action, fines, or reputational damage. So once potential risks have been identified, the next step is to measure the likelihood and impact of these risks. Okay. So, operational muna pala tayo, no? Before I forget, so here the table shows the relationship between the different types of hazards, the assets at risk, and the potential organizational impact. So physical hazards can put employees, equipment, and facilities at risk, leading to injuries, damage, and downtime. So if you did not put up physical infrastructure or safety mechanisms within your plant, within the premises of your firm, may mga employee na baka magkaroon ng injury, baka may mga makina na madadamage. So, of course, kung may mga impact doon na side, no, the assets at risk, it could lead to downtime. So, hindi ka na makakapag-manufacture, hindi ka na makakapag gawa, no? Wala nang performance of activities that could lead to the generation of income. So, second hazard is the chemical hazards. This can put employees, hindi lang employees, yung customers mo, as well as the environment at risk. So, what could be the organizational impact? Of course, you have health issues, no? Baka yung mga chemicals na ginagamit nyo, magkakaroon ng impact sa community din pala, di ba? So, health issues, environmental damage, which will ripen to a legal action, which we do not want that naman, di ba? So, next would be biological hazards. These can put employees, customers, and public health at risk, leading to illness, disease, reputational damage. So, marami palang hazards class, no? So you're just looking at a particular company, it might be manufacturing as depicted in this picture, no? Okay, so you have physical, chemical, biological. Aside from that, we have ergonomic, no? The ergonomic hazards can put employees and productivity at risk, leading to musculoskeletal disorders, fatigue, and decreased productivity. In addition to that, we also have psychological hazards that can put employees and organizational culture at risk, leading to stress, ayaw na nilang magtrabaho, low morale, and high turnover. Ayaw na nilang magtrabaho, so gusto nilang maghanap ng bagong work. Okay? We don't want that na mataas yung attrition risk. Kasi if mataas din yung turnover mo, you will go through the process of recruitment, hiring, training, and it entails cost class, di ba? And come to think of it, the organizational knowledge, the loyalty, how can you be able to grow? No, how can you be able to grow if palit ka ng palit ng trabahante or workers, no? Or the brain behind the organization. And then finally, we also have work organization hazards, no? In work organization hazards can put employees' productivity and efficiency at risk, leading to confusion, conflicts, and decreased productivity. Okay. Hindi nila alam kanino sila magre-report. Hindi nila alam kung sino yung direct head nila, sino yung subordinate nila, sino yung mga ka-team nila, no? It can lead to confusion. Sino ba talaga yung amo ko, no? So kung mahirap, example, you need to file a report, and then who will review the same, who will approve the same? Kasi na-confuse ka na, hindi mo na din nagawa yung mga compliance requirements mo. And then anong sasabihin mo sa boss mo or kung sino mo yung maghahanap ng report? Kasi po hindi ko nagawa, kasi po hindi ko kasi alam kung sino talaga yung pagbibigyan ko. Is that an excuse? Of course not, di ba? So it's important for companies to identify and manage these hazards to ensure the safety and well-being of employees and the overall success of the organization, no? The overall success of the organization. And by taking proactive measures to address these hazards, companies can create a safe and healthy work environment for their employees and improve the overall performance of the system or group. Parang ngayon siguro na iisip niyo na parang nagda-diagnose kayo ng sakit ng organization, no? Risk assessment, nagda-diagnose ka. Ano ba yung mga certain processes, programs ng organizations na kinakailangan kong matingnan, no? Baka may crack within the system that could, one of these days, parang bubuluga na lang sa'yo. You will be surprised by the impact that baka mag-shutdown kayo, wala nang trabaho ang lahat ng tao sa planta nyo or sa organization nyo kasi hindi nga na-anticipate pala na ito pala ay may impact, like may isang batas na pinalabas, no, na could have potential impact or business. Baka naman dumating yung panahon na mawawala ka na kasi sabi ng naging illegal na yung business mo, no? You need to listen, makiramdam, makinig sa balita, baka naman ito ay may impact sa business mo, no? Huwag patulog-tulog class kasi you will be one of, you are trained to become an accountant, conduct risk assessment, which is just one part lang talaga ng ginagawa natin sa workplace, no? And take note that in risk assessment, you do not focus only on the financial aspect, no? Hindi lang financial aspect yung tinitingnan natin dito, but also on the compliance, meron pang IT, meron pang operational, things that you have not learned in the classroom. Talagang kinakailangan yung aralin. The business process, the generation, the income generation, marami, no? And are you excited? Are you excited to work knowing na ito pala yung kinakailangan yung gawin, di ba? Ang rami-rami, but it's exciting. And it's really worth it. Kasi once you have already identified the risk, makakagawa ka ng action plan mo, mamimitigate mo to, makaka-monitor ka, makaka-assess ka. So, parang fulfilling yung work mo Kasi you have done your part and you have added value to your work, no? Hindi ka lang accountant, but also doctor, charot. Doctor ng mga risk, no? Before it happens, before something bad happens, nandun ka. And nandun ka para pigilan yung mga hazard na yon. Okay, class. So, after the identification of potential risks and events, it is important to prioritize them based on their likelihood and impact. And this involves assessing the probability of the risks occurring and the potential impact it could have on the organization. So, class, yung tingin nyo, no, mataas yung risk niya, may mataas din yung likelihood niya of occurring, you will give it a high impact and consider it as a high priority, no? Mataas yung likelihood, sa tingin nyo, mangyayari talaga to by hook or by crook. So, high priority yan. You need to treat it na. While a risk with a low likelihood of occurring and a low impact would be considered a low priority. So, low priority, okay, tolerate na yan. Diba? So, the likelihood of risk occurrence may be measured by using a 3-point or 5-point scale, where the measures may include, it could be rare, unlikely, possible, likely, almost certain, no? It could be in an occurrence like, it could occur 5 times a year, once a year, so ganun, di ba? Almost certain, every year. Rare, never. 0 to 1, so yung mga occurrence. So, for rare, the description would be the risk is highly unlikely to occur. No? Unlikely to occur. What are these rare circumstances? Rare at saka sana hindi mangyari, like, mature, mga ganun-ganon, mga in ganyang level. Unlikely, the risk may occur but is not expected to. Pwede, pero I think hindi yan mangyayari, no? Possible. The risk has a moderate chance of occurring. Likely, the risk is expected to occur, and almost certain, the risk is highly likely to occur. Ang hirap talagang i-identify kung saan dito, rare, unlikely, possible, likely, almost certain. If wala tayong masyadong understanding, no? Parang wala kayong general concept ng business nyo, hindi nyo alam yung trends, mahirap siya. Sabihin na, okay, I will give this possible, no? Or this one, likely to, likely. Or itong isa, almost certain, sa tingin ko mangyayari to no? So, hindi basta-basta yung pag-identify or pag-determine ng risk, no? Of course, once likelihood and impact, you need to analyze, implement. Ano ba yung gagawin ko kung ito ba yung almost certain na mangyayari? What are the additional controls that I need to implement, no? Or other processes? Kinakailangan ko bang gumawa ng mga system backup, many redundancies? Meron ka akong kinakailangan i-create na response plan in the event of system failures? No? So, for example, of identifying, measuring, and analyzing risks in the context of financial risk class, the risk of exchange rate fluctuations. No? Mga fluctuations, hindi natin alam, no? Yung peso, yung dollar, kailan siya hihina, kailan siya, no? The likelihood of this risk occurring may be measured based on the volatility of the exchange rates and the company's exposure to the currency fluctuations. Of course, class, di ba? Yung una, identifying the risk. Identify mo kung relevant ba siya. Exchange rate fluctuations. Kung wala ka naman ding dollar na wala kang dollar transactions, edi hindi mo din yun parang mafe-feel na kind of risk. Hindi yan risk sa'yo, hindi yan relevant. Kasi in the first place, wala kang importation, wala kang dollar savings or any other currency or foreign currency na account, no? So, hindi ka affected ng ganyan na klase na risks. So, if example, affected ka naman kasi meron kang importation, meron kang dollar savings, meron kang other foreign exchange na foreign currency, ibang foreign currency, no? Or meron kang, let's say, investments in in different foreign currency. So, ang impact could be measured by the potential financial losses and the impact on the company's cash flow. O, diba? Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. So, sometimes you gain on the foreign currency exchange rate, no? Sometimes you lose. So once the likelihood and the impact of the risk have been determined, you will then go on or move on the analysis of the risk to determine the appropriate responses. So, identified na yung risk mo, alam mo na yung priority ng risk mo, you need to come up with a list, kung mahimo, list gid sa class ng mga action plans. No? Ano yung gagawin ko? Mataranta? Of course not. Hindi. Mag-aral ka. Mag-aral ka kung ano ba yung dapat na mga gawin mo para naman gumaan ang buhay ng organization at gumaan ang buhay mo. So, less risk, less stress. Okay? Sige. Next would be on, bakit ayaw niya? Ayaw niya mag-next. Wait a minute, class. Okay. So, ayaw na naman niya. A moment. Okay, now, class, we have here, we are in the next step, no? So, on analyzing the risks. So, as you can see, we have here what you call a risk matrix, and it is divided into different zones based on the likelihood, probability, and impact of risk. No? These zones are typically labeled as minimum risk, low risk, moderate risk, high risk, extreme risk. Okay? Risks that fall into the high and extreme risk zone require immediate attention and action. Pag pula na siya, class, kinakailangan extreme risk, so extreme measures, yung totoo. While risk in the minimum and low risk zones may be managed through routine monitoring and management practices. No? So alam mo na yung mga relevant risk, na prioritize mo na yung mga risk. 'Di ba kinakailangan mo ding i-quantify siya, no? Kinakailangan i-quantify mo siya. So ima-match mo, class, yung probability at saka yung impact, no? Yung, let's say for example, yung exchange rate fluctuation. Sa iyong probability, tingin mo it's possible. But yung impact niya, kasi example, yung volume din ng transaction mo na related to that is immaterial, negligible. So, tingnan mo dito, class, tingnan natin ha, probability possible, pero tingin mo negligible siya. So, yung risk niya is minimum risk. At dahil yan ay minimum risk, yun ding gagawin mo could be routine monitoring land management practices, no? Yung pagkontrol mo sa on that particular risk, no? Now, let's say for example, what could be the other risk? Mag-isip muna tayo ng iba. How about in the context of IT-related risks, no? You may identify the risk as data breach, no? The likelihood of this risk occurring may be measured based on the company's current security measures and the likelihood of a successful cyber attack. Okay? Let's say marami kayong you are a BPO company, no? So service, BPO. Tingin mo it might be likely to happen. Likely to happen. And since you are BPO, let's say for example, yung lahat ng mga clients mo, listahan ng mga customers mo nandun, tapos wala kang IT section, wala kang IT department that would check on the firewall, ano bang tawag nila doon, mga IT, data protection, diba, yung mga ganon, data security. So, yung tingnan nyo, class, yung probability niya is likely, so tingin niya kayo sa likely na probability, tapos yung impact niya is critical or even catastrophic, no? Catastrophic. So, yung risk mo is nasa high risk at saka extreme risk. So, kung gano'n, kinakailangan mo gumawa ng action plan. Hindi lang pala action plan, no? Kinakailangan mo yung i-treat agad-agad, no? Maghanap ka ng competent na individuals to man those lines, no? Those lines of defense. Hindi ka accountant ka, hindi ka IT. So, ibigay mo na yon sa mga expert doon to ensure that the business will still be up and rolling even though you're sleeping, no? Walang tatawag sa'yo in the middle of the night as telling you na, sir, nag-down yung server natin or nawala lahat, sir, hindi na namin ma-recover, etc., etc. So, yung risk na yon, you need to analyze that risk, no? Based on the risk management matrix or the risk matrix in short, no? So once the likelihood and impact of the risk have been determined, the company may analyze the risk to determine appropriate responses. Mataas na risk, aksyonan mo na yan. Kung mababa yung risk, i-tolerate mo yan. Okay? So, may iba-iba ding examples or may iba-iba pang risk class, no, na pwede nyong matingnan. And then, you just identify the probability. Mangyayari kaya to? Hindi kaya to mangyayari? And what could be the impact to the organization? Negligible lang ba? Marginal lang ba? Moderate ba? Critical, catastrophic? Mawawalan ka ba ng trabaho nito? Yes, mawawalan ka ng trabaho nito. If it would be an extreme risk and catastrophic, in impact to the organization na hindi mo naman natingnan or hindi mo nakita. Kaya nga, di ba, in the first few slides we have discussed, it is very important that you know what are the relevant risks, no, surrounding the organization. And then, meron ding caveat doon kasi yung internal auditors, iba-iba din yung competencies. Hindi din sila pare-parehas ng exposure sa business or industry. So, each one of us needs to study the industry well. Kung wala naman, tingnan ka ng review of the industry practices, the regulatory, the history, whatever, to gain that knowledge. Kinakailangan natin i-compensate, I believe, in my personal opinion, no? Kung wala kang knowledge or wala kang experience on this particular industry, kinakailangan mo siyang i-compensate ng hard work sa pag-aral ng industry. Kasi wala din naman nagtrabaho na, alam ko na agad lahat. Alam ko lahat alam ko. O hindi, wala naman ganun, di ba? Like, we need to learn. No? We can learn these things and, of course, from there, you can be able to perform your job well. And that is, for example, in this case, the risk assessment. No? You can perform the risk assessment. Even though, bago ka pala. Kasi nga, nag-aral ka na pinag-aralan mo, you really tried to understand the industry, no? But it takes time, no? Huwag namang madaliin lahat, class. It takes time. And do not be too hard on yourself. Lahat tayo ay nagsimula sa wala. Okay? So, kaya natin to. So, for next is on the... Okay, ayaw na naman niya. So, let's pause and then let's retake. Just a moment. Okay. So now we go on to answer the question, bakit? Why is risk assessment important? Bakit nga ba? Why do we need to study this ba? Why not sila na lang yung mag-study? No? So why? The question of why does the sun go on shining? Charot. Why is risk assessment important, class? So why is risk assessment important? Well, you have organization assesses their controls and processes. Now, organizations can gain a better understanding of potential risks and weaknesses that may have gone unnoticed otherwise. Kasi parang day in and day out, yun lang yung ginagawa mo. Yun lang din yung ginagawa mo day in, day out from your year 1 to year 5, yun lang. No? So, sometimes, hindi na natin yung nakikita. So, we need to conduct a CSA. Yung CSA class is a control self-assessment. It's a risk management technique that involves having individuals within the organization assess their own controls and processes. So, ikaw, alam mo sa sarili mo, saan kaya yung mga processes na parang, okay, ito sa susunod ko na lang to aayusin, no? Mga ganon. So, your goal or the goal of CSA is to identify these potential risks and weaknesses in controls and processes. So, identify potential risks and develop plans to address this risk. Take note after the identification part, diba, identify, ano yon? Identify, measure, analyze. Diba? IMA. So, you need to develop plans to address this risk. Hindi mo naman agad-agad i-treat. Hindi mo pa nga alam yung impact ng gagawin mo ng mga plans. Diba? You need to know what's the proper timing to address this one. No? So, CSA is typically conducted by individuals who have deep understanding of the business and its operations and who are able to provide an objective assessment of the effectiveness of controls and processes. No? And take note, CSA can help foster a culture of risk awareness. So, dapat kinakailangan alam nila na may mga risk, no? And accountability within the organization. As ikaw yung may-ari ng process. So, you are called process owner. At the same time, you can also be called as a risk owner. No? And that since you are a risk owner, you need to be accountable to address that particular risk within the organization. Hindi pwedeng, okay, mataas yung risk ko na ganito, okay lang, si boss na yung bahala. Hindi ha, dapat at your level, you know already how to treat that risk. You need to empower yourself to become a 360-degree leader. Hindi porket, si boss, mas mataas naman yung sahod ni boss, so siya na lang bahala. Hindi ganon. Kasi baka naman dumating yung panahon na ikaw din na maging boss, no? Huwag mong sabihin yung boss mo naman, naging boss ka na tapos yung boss mo na ulit, yung hindi, take charge of your destiny. No? Ayusin mo na yung dapat mong ayusin at your own level. Huwag kang magantay na iba pa yung mag-aayos niyan, okay? You need to be accountable. And take note, CSA or the self-assessment, the controlled self-assessment can be a valuable tool for organizations looking to improve their risk management processes and ensure the overall performance of the system groups. No? So, what are the examples of business activities and their risk implications? We have first is on strategic planning. No? So for strategic planning, what are the implications for auditors? You need to understand what are the business strategy and what are its alignment with the organization's or the company's goals and objectives. On the risk side, failure to align strategy with goals, no? Failure to align strategy with goals and objectives can lead to poor financial performance and reputational damage. However, take note that strategic planning can help companies identify growth opportunities and mitigate potential risk. No? Where do you want to go? 5 years time, 10 years time. What would be your vision for your company? No? So, align. If you can't align it, could lead to poor financial performance. Now we proceed with for financial reporting. Auditors are responsible for ensuring the accuracy and completeness of financial statements. Kaya nga kinakailangan nating mag-take ng board exam para meron tayong, may confidence din yung public na na-meet natin yung minimum requirement, no, for the profession. And inaccurate financial reporting can lead to legal action, fines, and reputational damage because people or the public will rely on your report, no? They will rely on that particular report na ibibigay niya ibibigay niya yung pera niya sa iyo because they would want to invest in a company that earns well. Mataas yung ROI niya. So, nagbigay siya ng capital, mataas din kung the higher the capital, the higher the risk na ma-absorb niya or yung kinakailangan niyang i-shoulder, no, na risk. So, auditors are responsible for ensuring the accuracy and completeness of these financial statements. What are the risks? So, inaccurate financial reporting. Yun nga. Sinabi ko na nga yun paulit-ulit, ma'am. Yes. Charot. Now, we move on the opportunity side. Accurate financial reporting can improve investor confidence and lead to increased access to capital. Oo nga naman, because when the people feel that they can trust you, itong profession natin class, it's based on trust and confidence. No? If they feel or if the investor feels that the management knows what they're doing, they know how to project the financial side of it as well as the operational side of it. So maraming magbibigay, charot, maraming magpapahiram or magbibigay ng, kung on the creditor side, no, parang maraming magpapautang sa iyo kasi alam nila makakabayad ka. On the other far end, maraming din mag-i-invest sa iyo kasi alam nila na alam mo din paano hawakan yung pera nila at palaguin ito. So next is internal controls. For internal controls, auditors must ensure that internal controls are effective in mitigating what? Ano yung effectiveness niya? Mitigating the risk and preventing fraud. And weak or ineffective internal controls can lead to financial losses, reputational damage, and of course, legal action. However, effective internal controls can improve operational efficiency and reduce the likelihood of fraud. Kaya, tinitingnan meron tayong internal audit na as much as possible, broad din yung knowledge niya sa business and the various processes to be able to identify the relevant risks. No? For compliance, auditors must ensure that companies comply with relevant laws, regulations, and internal policies and procedures. So, if I may suggest, if you will be conducting a risk assessment specifically on targeting compliance risk, to address that one, you need to have a register. Nakalista lahat doon. Kanino ka kinakailangang bumangon. Like BIR, SEC, BSP, CDA, name it. Depende kung anong klase ng industry you belong, no? Ilista mo lahat kung maaari, no? IRR, Memorandum of Circular, Revenue Regulation, ilista mo lahat yung tingin mo kinakailangan mong i-file, i-submit, bayaran. Because non-compliance can lead to legal action, fines, and reputational damage. On the other end, compliance can help companies avoid legal penalties and maintain a positive reputation. And by the way, class, if maganda din yung relationship natin sa mga government agencies, may ibibigay din silang tip. Like, let's say, for example, pwede kang magbayad before, let's say, 2 or 3 months before the deadline. Baka meron silang discount na ibibigay, just like the real property. O, di ba, makakasave ka. Nag-comply ka na nga, makakatipid ka pa. No? Which is also nice, no? Which could really help improve the bottom line. Okay. So overall, the control self-assessment is an important tool for organizations looking to improve their risk management processes and ensure the overall performance of the system or group, and that by utilizing the knowledge and expertise of individuals within the organization, the control self-assessment can help identify potential risks and weaknesses in controls and processes and develop plans to address them. Okay, I hope that is clear. If you have questions, please write it down and we will discuss it when we gather together, no? Maybe in a virtual class. Okay. Let's continue. I will just cut this video, no, into 2. This will be the first part and then the other part so that I can also upload it na. Sige. See you later.